All right, friends, I'm going to wreck your nativity scene for you by digging deeper into Matthew chapter 2. In chapter 2, we meet the Magi, or the wise men that we sometimes call them, or astrologers, which would be completely appropriate. They never actually came to see Jesus when he was a baby. I know, we're triggered all around Christmas time. They saw the star when Jesus was born, and then they chose to follow it and started their travels. But it took them a while to get from where they were to where Jesus was. Now, the Magi, these astrologers, their significance is a theme in Matthew. They are outsiders in every sense of the world. They are outside of the Jewish faith. They are outside of the Jewish people. They're outside of anyone in Israel, and they're coming from far in order to be there with Jesus. And also, fun fact, there probably weren't three of them. They might have been an entire traveling caravan. They could have been 50 or 60 astrologers that came to the place that Jesus was born. They aren't exactly sure where the child Jesus is, and so they stop by the local ruler's house to see if they can sort of get some directions. And they stop by and they visit King Herod. Now, Herod, it isn't the name of a particular individual, but it's a family that governed over Palestine, and they're mentioned multiple times in the New Testament. There's at least 6 Herods that we read of throughout sort of Jesus's life. This villain in this story is absolutely Herod the Great. Herod the Great ruled Palestine at the time that Jesus was born, but he is a Jewish man, but he is loyal to Rome, who are the occupiers at the time. We also learn about Herod's character. Herod is greedy, and he's violent, and he's moody. But the Magi don't know that he's got this sort of temperament, and so they stop by to see Herod, and they want to know where this child Jesus, this King of the Jews, is going to be. Now, it's this theme through, you'll see the entire Bible. When people hear about Jesus, when people in power hear about Jesus, they're immediately threatened. Later, they'll do whatever it takes in their power in order to stay in power. They're threatened by Jesus' presence just from the get-go. As you keep reading, you'll all of a sudden notice that then the author of Matthew again ties it back to the Hebrew Old Testament, showing how the birth of Jesus, all these events, including the wise men and the Magi, they all connect to what God has been doing the entire time. And notice when you keep reading that they visit Jesus in a house. They don't show up in the stable or a barn or when he's in a manger. They show up at his home where he is staying. Now, the idea of 3 magi is because there are 3 gifts. They give these gifts that are totally inappropriate for a baby. They give him gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But because there are 3 gifts, we naturally assume that there are 3 wise men. But think about it this way. My family and I, we all went to a birthday party the other day, and we only brought 1 gift. So it could have been any number of wise men. But what they do is they enter into Jesus' house, and they pay homage to this child Jesus. But from then, they are sent back into the world. So they have this theme of coming towards Jesus and then being sent back out that you'll see over and over again through the book of Matthew. For the second time, in just 2 chapters, an angel of the Lord comes to Joseph to tell Joseph to go ahead and take Mary and Jesus and escape into Egypt because Herod is on a murderous rampage. He does some math when he figures out with the wise men when the star appeared, and then he decides that he's going to send out and he's going to create a permanent solution. He goes ahead and sends his warriors out to kill every child, every boy child under 2 years old. It's really sad. Well, when we read this, the original readers would have read that and they would have connected immediately to the Pharaoh who hated all the Jews, which, by the way, back then in the Old Testament were called the Israelites. And then when they flee from Egypt, now we're seeing this reconciliation of God going back into Egypt. So it's this theme that kind of wraps around those original Jewish converts so they can see how the life of Jesus connects to everything that God has ever done. When they're in Egypt, for the 3rd time, Joseph has a dream in Egypt that the murderous Herod has died, and it's now time for him to go return to his hometown in Nazareth. You see the Magi in Bethlehem, the escape to Egypt, and now the boy is settled in Nazareth. You see what Jesus is doing, what Matthew is doing, is connecting all the holy places in the Old Testament about who Jesus was prophesied to be. enjoy the chapter. It's full of magi, murder, and migrants. Here's our questions for today. What do you think it means that Jesus was a refugee in Egypt? And number 2, this chapter holds a lot of the theme of power, the Magi, Herod, and Jesus. When you think of power, what do you tend to think of? And how does this chapter challenge traditional views of power?